Hello everyone, this is David, and tonight's movie that we watched was Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, or Godzilla vs. the Cosmic Monster, or Godzilla vs. the Bionic Monster. Really depends on where you were and what it is, but suffice it to say the movie's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. And Mechagodzilla is one of the new monsters in this movie. And in this movie we actually get two monsters. We got Mechagodzilla, and we also get King Caesar, or as he should be known, King Caesar. So let's talk about Mechagodzilla, and we'll talk about King Caesar a bit. So Mechagodzilla is exactly what he sounds like. He is a giant robot version of Godzilla. And unlike Godzilla, he can fly. He can shoot lasers out of his chest, out of his face. He has missiles. He can spin his head around and create a force field. He's got a lot of different abilities, and he's quite impressive. He's very formidable, and he is one of the capstone monsters of the Showa Era. The movie itself, bringing it back to its darker roots. Godzilla is no longer as friendly as he was before. He's still a guardian of the world, but he's not a happy, friendly guy. He's still a giant radioactive dinosaur, so that's good. But anyway, so Mechagodzilla. So where does he come from? Well, he's created by space apes. It's a little weird, but don't know how else to describe them. They're space apes, and they want to destroy the world, take it over. Okay, that seems kind of typical at this point, but sure. At least they have a good idea. Build a monster based off the best monster. And for what it's worth, in a one-on-one fight, Mechagodzilla would win. He's pretty BA. But that's all there is really about Mechagodzilla. I mean, he's a robot, and he's got a lot of weapons. What you would probably expect from a robot monster. What about this other guy, King Caesar, or King Caesar, or King Caesar? So he's called King Caesar Caesar in the dub, and the reason for that is because really, when you boil it down, us Westerners are dirty gaijin, and we don't understand things. So we know who Caesar is, king of Rome, all that. But a Caesar is something from apparently Okinawa mythology, which is basically like a guardian animal. It's like a guardian beast. It's if you've seen any sort of Japanese idols, and they're pretty common. One of them is a thing that we, I guess, refer to as a foo dog, but I believe it's called a sisa, and it's basically like a lion dog. It's those things, they kind of are perched, their front legs sitting squarely in front of them, back legs, they're very at attention, and they have like a big puffy mane, and they've got like the square face with the big fangs that kind of go off in different directions. And that's basically what King Caesar is. He's one of those, except as a kaiju. So that's pretty cool. He doesn't have a lot of abilities. He does and he doesn't. So, like Anguirus, he's kind of a different guy. He's more of a brawler than other kaiju. The costuming they used was more akin to, I think, the costuming they used in War of the Gargantuas, which is a separate movie, but suffice it to say, they trimmed it down a lot, and King Caesar can do a lot of things you wouldn't normally see a man in a big costume like that being able to do. He can jump around pretty easily. He can do jump kicks. He can do all sorts of run. He runs around really fast. So they get the athleticism of this character down pretty well, and it's portrayed pretty well through the actor that was in the suit. He can also use his eyes to reflect energy beams. I don't know how he does that, but it's one of his powers, so it's pretty specific, but it's the way it works. So how does this movie start off? This is a pretty strange movie, but it's a pretty good one at the same time. So there's some strange events happening near Okinawa. There's this priestess who's doing this ceremony. I'm not really sure what the ceremony is supposed to be about, but she suddenly collapses and has a vision of, I believe it was King Ghidorah destroying a city, and like a city in flames. And Ghidorah's not actually in this movie, but I think it was more of a red herring to lead us astray. And so that's interesting. And then the Splunker guy finds this weird piece of metal in this cave, which he takes to this professor, and they examine it. And he finds out it's this weird type of metal called space titanium. And in the meantime, they go to further explore the cave, and they find, or they explore like this excavation that someone found by accident or whatever, and it's got this crazy prophecy. Basically, the prophecy is a bunch of things are going to happen. There's going to be a cloud that looks like a mountain. Sorry, a mountain above the clouds. But basically, that amounts to there's a cloud that looks like a mountain, which I thought was okay. That's interesting. So when that happens, a monster's going to appear. Well, fucking, it's Japan. Monsters appear like every fucking day. I mean, think about it. If we're going to Power Rangers territory, like all the time, they're just popping up like weeds in the lawn. It's crazy. So then, the red moon sets and the sun will rise in the west. 2 more monsters will appear. Okay, well, that's interesting. So 2 monsters will appear and they'll save the world. So that's interesting. That takes up a little bit of time for them to figure that out because they have to go to people and talk to stuff. And they find this idol, which is like one of those little dogs I mentioned earlier. It turns out it's an idol to King Caesar. So they take it, and they're being stalked by these mysterious men. So the first sign appears when they're flying. They're flying back to go talk to some people, and they see the mountain in the sky. And they're like, oh crap, it's going to happen. And there's an explosion at night, and Godzilla appears out of Mount Fuji and goes on a rampage, just starts destroying things. So that's a little weird, because lately he's been friendly to people. He bumps into Anguirus, who just happens to be kicking around, and he beats up Anguirus. He beats the shit out of him, grabs him by the throat, or by the mouth, wrenches his mouth open, and Anguirus, vomits blood everywhere. So, but, I mean, he doesn't die. He runs off. Kaiju are pretty durable guys. They have to be. And he runs off. I'm not really sure to do what. But in the process of fighting him, he scraped off a bit of Godzilla's skin, which underneath it is shiny metal. So, maybe it's not Godzilla. Maybe it's something else going on. So this rampage continues until the night, and then Godzilla shows up, rising out of the ocean, and he fights in this industrial complex, which is pretty good. It's a well-done fight, and it reveals Mechagodzilla, because Godzilla blasts him with his atomic breath. Oh, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. It should have been obvious that it wasn't Godzilla, because the monster doesn't make Godzilla's roar. It makes a different roar, which is pretty much a dead giveaway, because all of the monsters have their own iconic sounds, and in fact, in some of the movies, they identify them by the noises that they make. Alright, so Godzilla fights him and gets the shit kicked out of him. Cleanly loses to Mechagodzilla and, beats the crap out of him, just wrecks his day. Well, that's not good. Godzilla goes back into the ocean, bloodied and defeated. But Mechagodzilla's been damaged in the process. Well, so they return to base and they need to do repairs. So what do? They're like, we need the best guy for this. Who's the best guy for this? Well, this scientist over there, because I don't know why. You built a giant monster in secret underground all by yourselves, but you need to bring in a third-party human that doesn't understand space technology. Apparently he does, according to them. But so there's a lot of espionage kind of happening in this, because there's a lot of different characters. I'm not going to go into each and every one of them because it's kind of complicated what happens, and it's a lot of intrigue going on, which is good. The intrigue is nice touch, and it makes a little bit more sense considering the nature of this one. Suffice to say, there's aliens going around looking like humans, but they're really space apes. When they're hurt or killed, they revert. And there's a Interpol agent going around hunting them down, and he ends up helping out the main characters. And so, anyway, the doctor gets kidnapped. His daughter gets kidnapped. This other guy gets kidnapped. And they get brought in. And he's like... And the head of aliens is a really cocky guy. He's always drinking. He's like a Bond villain. He really isn't like an alien. He feels more like a Bond villain. He's always drinking like his something out of a glass. I'm not really sure what it is. And he's like, okay, so you can help us. But if you don't, kill your daughter. Kill her friend. And then probably kill you. So he ends up helping. They rebuild Mechagodzilla. And he's like, he pulls a Darth helmet. He's like, fooled you, gonna kill you anyway. So they put him into a Bond trap where they fill the room with steam to cook him. But meanwhile, two other guys sneak in. They break him out. They all escape. The Bond villain blows up their car, but they're like, haha, we fooled them because we didn't actually turn on our car. We expected this. They sneak back in to disrupt Mechagodzilla. Meanwhile, Mechagodzilla is on the rampage. He's going around. And the sun rises. The prophecy comes true. And they put the statue at the right spot. And it opens up this mountainside where King Caesar is sleeping. And the priestess from the beginning does a prayer, basically, doing the King Caesar song to wake him up. He wakes up and he explodes. Or well, he doesn't explode, but he explodes. There's an explosion as he wakes up, and he goes to fight Mechagodzilla. He does pretty well at first because Mechagodzilla is like shooting him with the lasers, and he's reflecting them back with his eyes. So that's pretty good. But then Mechagodzilla's like, okay, well that's not working, so we're gonna adapt the strategy. Fire missiles. And missiles fuck up King Caesar. So he like ducks behind a mountain. Mechagodzilla's response? He flips open a latch on his chest, a giant fucking cannon, blasts the mountain off, and then fires missiles at King Caesar. So that's pretty good. Meanwhile, Godzilla shows back up. In the meantime, he'd been hit with lightning repeatedly, to apparently Highlander quickening him up to power. So that's pretty cool. And he manages to beat up Mechagodzilla, but Mechagodzilla turns him, I believe, into a blood sprinkler. He fires a bunch of missiles into him, and they just like go in, and there's blood everywhere. He's bleeding profusely. It's pretty bad. Mechagodzilla they start fighting, they team up. Mechagodzilla spins his head around backwards, fires lasers at King Caesar, fires missiles at Godzilla, does a head spin thing to make a shield. So like he's just outgunning them at every opportunity, but eventually they team up. They manage to defeat him. I mean, he tries to run. Godzilla uses a magnetic field to pull him back in. And they eventually take him down. And the humans blow up the base the aliens have. And they destroy Mechagodzilla. And Godzilla goes home. King Caesar goes back into his cave and collapses it back down. And the day is saved. So that's King Kong. That's Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. A very good film. I'd highly recommend this. I kind of skimmed over a lot of the human parts because they're kind of complicated, and I didn't want to get everything like wrong as to the order everything happens in. So check it out. It's a pretty good one. There's a lot of kaiju action. There's some decent human action, some human intrigue that I think you'll find at least passingly interesting. So all things said and done, this one's good. Check it out. It's a little bit more violent than previous entries, so little kids steer away, but, you know, again, 10 and up, it's probably completely fine. Younger is probably okay too. It's not too bad, but you never know. It really depends on the kid. But, alright. So next up on the agenda is another movie, the last of the Showa era. This is the end of classic Godzilla, Terror of Mechagodzilla, or Mechagodzilla's Counterattack, or Terror of Godzilla. That's right. Complete reversal in the title. Well, one way or another, we're going to see who's the real terror. Terror of Mechagodzilla. Up next. Alright, folks. Good night.